What is up, guys? Today I want to have a bit more of a personal sit down chat with you about something that is really important to me, something that I have suffered quite badly with before, though I have managed to get to a point where I'm able to deal with it now. And that is social anxiety. It's quite an important subject to me because I've gone from a place where I was really afraid of other people's opinions and people judging me to a point where I can actually sit now in front of a camera and expressively talk about kind of sensitive subjects. What we're going to do in this video is we're going to go through my own experience of social anxiety, where it first showed up for me, how it showed up in my body, and then we're going to talk about the things that I've incorporated into my daily routine to help me manage this. As I said, this is something that you can manage. It takes time, just like with any anxiety, but you can get on top of it and you can start on that journey today. So I hope that this video is useful to you, and yeah, let's just have a good chat about it. So before we begin, if you're interested in mental health, psychology or personal development, this is the place for you to be. You can like the video, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment down below because I love interacting with you guys. I post videos every single Wednesday on topics relating to those things. So let's get into the video, social anxiety. So I found a nice little definition of social anxiety which I think fits the mold quite nicely, and it is: social anxiety, it is an intense anxiety or fear of being judged, negatively evaluated or rejected in a social or performance situation. So I think that describes it quite nicely. It's just a lot of anxiety over being judged. So where it started for me was probably high school. For those of you who didn't know, I am gay, and I feel like going through my teenage years, I just had a lot of identity issues, and I was definitely fearful of what people would think of me if they thought I was gay. I was definitely in some resistance towards myself there, and that just perpetuated this fear of being judged. And if you're prone to anxiety anyway, more than likely going to experience this social anxiety. So it kind of started in high school, and it just came with me all the way to, well, now. Still deal with it today. But it was really prominent for me when I was dealing with identity issues. Once I came out, once I started building myself up a bit, it definitely got better, but it started in high school. I would walk into rooms and just not look at anybody. I would fear people looking at me. It was just so many things like came together to kind of like add fuel to the flames of this social anxiety. Nowadays, I don't deal with it to that extreme anymore because I'm able to manage it, and we'll get into why later on. But let's talk about what it feels like. Social anxiety, obviously, like any anxiety, feels like that general fight or flight response. For me, it always comes up in my chest, so I get like a tightness, or I feel just this urge to want to avoid a situation or get myself out of a situation. Where it shows up for me mainly nowadays is with people who I'm not comfortable with, or people who I don't really know. So if I'm in work and I'm speaking to somebody I don't really know and we're having small talk, and small talk's a really good place. I would be like speaking to somebody and we'll be like, oh hey, how's your day? My day's good, thanks, how's yours? Blah blah blah, making small talk. And then in my head I'm like, okay, now we need to think about something to say next. We can't have that awkward silence between thinking about what to say. We need to make this interesting. And it would just be this constant stream of anxious thoughts, basically. It's just like a hyper-awareness of the social setting. That's how I would describe it. With that underlying need to be liked, with that underlying need to be approved of, which just perpetuates this anxiety, basically. If I'm making a video and I haven't made one in a while, it's again those anxious thoughts which just automatically come into my head of just imagining somebody else watching me, thinking about what they're looking at, thinking about what they're hearing, of course with a negative connotation on there. So maybe I don't know what I'm talking about, maybe nothing I say makes sense. Am I doing something right? Am I doing something wrong? Just a constant stream of negativity. So you can see here, like if you're playing into these thoughts, if you're somebody who is very much in the head during these situations, you can feel very anxious. And I still have times now when I'm having small talk with somebody, or I'm having a conversation with somebody I don't really know, and I'll walk away from that conversation with like a sigh of relief of, back to myself. I don't have to worry, because it's just this automatic thing that's going on in my head, and it does have the potential to weigh you down as well. I will feel sometimes if I've had a long day of these sort of conversations and these sort of situations, I'll get back and just feel very heavy because I've had to deal with the weight of that added anxiety on top of just my normal life situations. So amidst all of that negativity, I wanted to talk about how I've actually started to manage it and what I did to start developing myself and grow past these social anxieties I had. Number one, and I think is the most important one of them all, was finding my own identity and becoming comfortable in myself. That's what anxiety is at the end of the day. It's a lack of comfort. And being socially anxious is in part due to a lack of comfort in who you are. I would not be worrying what other people think about me if I knew who I was and if I was comfortable with who I was. And for a large part of my life, throughout my entire teenage years, I didn't know who I was, I wasn't happy with who I was, and I wasn't comfortable with myself, which just perpetuated this intense fear over being judged. So another reason I started Above the Middle was to build that self-confidence, was to build that sense of who I am and what I like, and showing that to people. And of course caring what other people think, but also just doing it for myself. And with that, I've started to build this inner confidence now over who I am, which has made it much easier for me to deflect the possibility of people not liking me. Who cares if people don't like me, because at the end of the day, I like myself. So that was number one, building that inner self-confidence. So important, I can't stress it enough. Number two, facing situations. So with any anxiety, avoidance adds fuel to the fire. If you're avoiding situations that are making you anxious, the next time you face that situation, you're going to feel even more anxious. That's just a fact. And that comes with any sort of anxiety. And the reason why exposure and response therapy is so effective in treating anxiety and phobias is because it allows you to face your anxieties and then learn how to manage the physiological and mental symptoms and sensations which arise as a result. I didn't do an actual course of exposure and response therapy, I just did it in my own life. I just exposed myself to anxious situations. And that came in tandem with learning how to self-regulate. If you are having very adverse reactions to your anxiety, it's likely because you are unable to regulate the stress response that you're being put under. If I'm not able to handle myself under stressful situations, if I'm not able to regulate myself when I'm speaking to somebody and I'm feeling anxious, I'm just going to run away from that situation. So there has to be ways for us to not only face our problems, not only face our anxieties, but also handle ourselves when we are in those situations. And now there's two things which were super important for me in developing that self-regulation. One of them being mindfulness and meditation. For anybody who is dealing with anxiety, meditation allowed me to distance myself from my thoughts, allowed me to see that every thought in my head was not a true reflection of who I was. And in that, it allowed me to add space between me and my anxious thoughts, to not take every single anxious thought in my head to be truth, to be able to go into an anxious situation and view my anxious thoughts through a glass window and not act on them. What I mean by this is back to my small talk example. So if I'm speaking to somebody and we're having small talk and I'm worrying in my head about what they're going to think of me, because I've developed my mindfulness enough now, I can be in that anxious situation but not taking those anxious thoughts seriously. It's like I can see those anxious thoughts playing in my head. I can see that story in my head, but I'm choosing not to play into it. I'm choosing to see them for what they are, just a fear response that isn't a reflection of me, myself. And I'm able to just continue and stay in the moment. And that's another big one as well, the ability to stay present. which you will get out of mindfulness meditation. It's the ability to stay grounded in your reality and to not spend so much time in your head. Number 2, breath work. One of the things in your life which is constantly present is your breath. Your breath is never going to happen in the future. Your breath is never going to happen in the past. When you are breathing, it's happening right here, right now. So the ability to come into our body, the ability to follow our breath when we are in anxious situations, immediately takes you away from your head and brings you into the present. So when I'm faced with a stress response, I just turn to my breath. I take a deep breath in and a deep breath out. I do that like 10 times and it calms me down. If I'm in an anxious situation and somebody else is speaking to me and I'm not speaking to them, maybe I'll just stand there and start focusing in on my breath, listening to them, but focusing in on my breath, because it keeps me present. It keeps me in the moment. If they're speaking to me and immediately I'm going into my head and engaging with those anxious thoughts, I'm going to start feeling anxious. I'm going to start creating this scenario where my anxiety is starting to prevail. So breath work is super important to bring yourself and anchor yourself in the present moment. It's a really good anchor. That's a great word for it. So those are my 3 things for you. If you deal with social anxiety or any anxiety, if you feel like you can't do this alone, by all means, find a coach, find a therapist, confide in a friend, somebody who can help you. You don't have to do this alone. Because I know myself how intense these feelings can be. And I know also that I probably haven't had it as bad as some people do. So that's what I want to say today. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate all your support. I would love if you could subscribe to the channel, like the video. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys next Wednesday.